All of my books are special to me. I have a truckload of books that I have written that I have never published because they weren't as special to me as the ones that I publish. One of my favorites is The Hidden Treasure Files. This is an antique store, a very old, dark antique store on the corner of Rodney and Lee in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. An actual address. Once a week, the owner of the antique store takes half a dozen items and on a Sunday morning has an auction. And the same 8 or 10 people show up, and some buy, and some just really go there for the coffee and the cookies that are waiting for them. Well, on this particular day, one of the items he opted to offer to auction is this, and it's an old license, and it goes back to Prohibition days. Absolutely worthless, unless it's to somebody who finds it of value. Sometimes there are things of value in an item beyond what you can see. In this case, it happened to have been the frame. The Hidden Treasure Files. Let me tell you a little about this item. Every Sunday morning, rain or shine, promptly at 10:30 a.m., Albert Frug held an auction. In a back room behind his store, All Things Remembered. It was the only time he actively invited customers into his store. These auctions were held to show the lawyer in charge of his mother's estate that he was trying new ways to grow the customer base. He aggressively touted the event as an opportunity to purchase a selected hidden treasure at a bargain. Although he privately referred to it as an easy way to palm off meaningless stuff. Usually the event attracted 1 or 2 local residents, stray passerbys, and a homeless person just seeking a warm place to sit for an hour or so. The only constant almost every Sunday was Howard Hill. Howard played guitar in some of the biggest bands during the 1940s, 50s, 60s. Later in his career, he owned a small club and a recording studio in Hartford, and he was always on the lookout for old 78 RPM records and just about any examples of big band memorabilia that he could use to decorate his club. Another constant was a huge pot of hot coffee, and on very, very rare occasions, a box of stale donuts. A half-hearted attempt to pay tribute to what his grandmother once told him was the very least he could do to properly welcome friends, new and old, and neighbors who were gracious enough to enter her store. For some reason, this week's auction was attracting a full house. By 10:15 a.m., every seat was taken, all 5 of them. Elizabeth quickly set up a 6th chair, and 3 people were leaning against the back wall. For an Albert Flug auction, this was considered a mob scene. Elizabeth burst into Frug's office at 10:22, declaring excitedly in her heavy accent, "It's like New Year's Eve's in there. Pipple's waiting for auction, so it should begin already." Frug put down a competitor's catalog, slowly removed his reading glasses, and stared angrily up at Elizabeth. "How many times do I have to tell you to knock and wait to be invited before you burst into my office, Elizabeth?" "But boss," "Don't but boss me, Elizabeth." "But boss, the room, it is packed with pipples. I never seen so many pipples. There are pipples outside on the sidewalks. They're waiting for to come in." Clearly annoyed, Frug stood up, still glaring at her. He slowly walked past her into the area set aside for the weekly auction. He took a quick look around, nodded good morning to Howard, and returned to his office. As usual, he sneered, "You have grossly exaggerated the situation. There are about 10 people in there, nowhere near the hundreds of pipples you said. So when was the last time you had 10 pipples in there? She said. You wants to make another pot of hot coffee? I already put almost a full pot left over from Friday out there. When it's gone, it's gone. Who do you think I am, Starbucks? Frug screamed. Now get back in there and make sure no one steals anything. He finally got around to the podium. He held up the first item, then the second item, and then he finally reached for this. I know that you're going to love this next item, he said with a broad grin. It is very rare and highly priced. It's a document from the Prohibition era, 1920s America. This, he said proudly, is one of the few surviving official registry of stills certificates. Look at this little beauty. He moved it from side to side, in near mint condition. I should look this good when I'm as old as this precious document. He waited for laughs. When none came, he moved on. It has all the necessary official signatures and government seals and has been certified to be 100% authentic by yours truly. He stopped speaking to try to gauge the item's reception and then said, this was issued to a Michigan company on November 5, 1928, giving them legal permission to process alcohol for their primary business. In 1919, the United States government issued a lot of these. This is one that rarely survived. There was a shuffling among the attendees, but no response. Oh, come on, he chided. This would look great on any wall in your home or as a conversation starter for gathering of friends and family. Who will start the bidding off? He gave it the wildest grin. Do I hear $2? Nothing, no movement, the sign of death. He looked around, clearly disappointed. Come on, $2. Do I hear $2? Howard Hill raised his hand. I'll bid $2, he said. Up until the moment Frug decided to include it in today's auction, the permit was just something he had been using to prop up his open office window and had the dents and deep scratches on the frame to prove it. Frug was about to bang the gavel down to ensure a $2 windfall, but before he could make it, one little old lady with a shawl covering her face said, I'll bid $5. Howard Hill stared at the older woman. He fished through his pockets, scooped up a handful of small change. $5.37, he said. The old woman countered $5.75. I'll bid $5.87, another person said. A middle-aged man leaning against the wall slowly removed his dark glasses, wiped his forehead with a checkered hanky, rolled his eyes upward, and said with contempt, $500. A hush fell over the room as everyone turned to look at the new bidder. Frug couldn't believe his ears. I beg your pardon, he finally said in disbelief. The man stepped forward and emphasized each word. I said, I will give you $500 for that item. Without missing a beat, Frug looked around the room. Do I hear $600? Howard Hill jumped up, waved his hand widely. Albert, you know me. I've been coming here for a very long time. Can I place a bid on credit? You know I'm good for any amount I commit to pay. Albert looked at Hill and gave him a friendly smile. I'm really sorry, Howard, but there are rules, and unfortunately, even though I know, yes, you are definitely good for any commitment, bids have to be paid in full at the time of sale. Hill sat down, clearly upset. The older woman who had started the bidding war had a portable phone against her ear, cleared her throat as she said, $1,000. So the previous higher bidder said, someone has come to life. Okay, I'll bid $5,000. With the phone held closely to her ear, the woman raised her hand and said, $30,000. The man glared at the old woman. $50,000. The older woman listened intently to the voice on the other end of the phone, then put the portable phone into her handbag and shouted, $75,000. The room went silent. The man cleared his throat and then said, I bid $100,000. Then looking straight at the older woman, he yelled, Beat that, you old bag. Frood was speechless. He stood with his mouth open, unable to make a sound. Elizabeth walked over to him and whispered, Say something, boss. Frood pushed her away, bent down, grabbed his cup, and took a large gulp. Well, it looks like I just bought the item, the man said arrogantly. Not so fast, the elderly woman yelled back, taking the phone out of her purse as she said, I need to make a phone call. Forget it, the man growled. I made the high bid. You want it to bid higher, bid higher. But if you don't or can't, then this is now mine. He waited for a response, and when none came, he smiled and said, Then is it a done deal? You will not put this down. My website is martinhermanauthor.com.